Ordinary Council meeting of the 28th of March 2025 in the Marble Bar Council chambers, which I declare open at 10:31, I'm guessing. I commence today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Namal people. We pay our respects to all their elders past, present and emerging. I also welcome the Shire's recently appointed Director of Regulatory Services, Robert Paul, to today's meeting, and I also welcome our recently appointed Director of Corporate Services, Emile Moore. We look forward to working with both of you. May I ask everyone present to turn off and refrain from using your mobile phone? Me too. For the duration of the meeting, tablets and laptops are permitted for the purpose of accessing agenda items and notes. I advise all those in attendance that this meeting is being audio recorded, which can be accessed by members of the public and the media, and council members should refrain from making any defamatory statements. The meeting is also being live streamed, a recording of which is available on the Shire's YouTube channel and website. Members of the public are advised that anyone who has any application lodged with the Shire of East Pilbara must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of application and any conditions attached to the decision made by the Shire of East Pilbara in respect of that application. Number 2, attendance by electronic means. A request to attend the meeting by electronic means has been received from Shire President Anthony Middleton, Councillor David Everett and Councillor David Coular, which are approved by me as Deputy Shire President presiding this meeting in accordance with Regulation 14C of the Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996. Number 3, record of attendance, apologies and leaves of absence. In accordance with Section 5.34B of the Local Government Act 1995, I, Councillor Wendy McWhirter-Brooks, will be presiding at today's meeting as Shire President Anthony Middleton is attending the meeting via a remote platform, MS Teams. 3.1, council members present, Councillor Wendy McWhirter-Brooks, Deputy Shire President, Councillor Anthony Middleton, Shire President on MS Teams, Councillor Peter Bear, Councillor Milton Chapman, Councillor David Everett, Councillor David Coular, as previously mentioned both on MS Teams, Councillor Lou Lockyer, Councillor Lee Anderson. The executive team, Stephen Harding, CEO, Nicole O'Neill, Director of Community Experience, Emil Moore, Acting Director Corporate Services, Etienne Vorster, Director of Infrastructure Services, and Robert Paul, Director of Regulatory Services. Our Shire officers, Joshua Brown, Manager of Governance, Risk and Procurement, Sally Fry, Governance Administration Officer on Teams, and Tessin Alley, Governance Administration Officer, also on Teams. We have no apologies. We have a leave of absence request from Councillor Annabelle Landy, and this is to be voted and confirmed during item 9 of the agenda. Are there any disclosures of interest to be made in relation to any item on today's agenda, please? Yes, Lou.
Yeah, I'll have a disclosure of interest for items 12.3.1 on the agenda.
And is that, will you exclude yourself from the meeting or do you note a conflict of interest?
Sorry, yeah, I'll leave the room.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lockyer.
I've got one there, Councillor Brooks.
Yes.
12.3.2, where I'll leave the meeting and just need someone to give me a call once that's done.
Thank you, President Middleton. Declarations by council members to have given due consideration to all matters contained in the business paper before the meeting. I'll go first. Oh, Anthony, can you go first, please?
Yeah, I've given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers before this meeting.
Thank you. Myself, I have given due consideration to all matters that are contained in the business papers before this meeting. Councillor Anderson.
I've given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers before this meeting.
Councillor Everett.
I've given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers before the meeting.
Councillor Kula.
I've given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers before the meeting.
Councillor Chapman.
I've given due consideration to all matters contained in business papers before the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Lockyer.
I've given due consideration to all the matters contained in the business papers before the meeting.
Councillor Bear.
I have given due consideration to all the matters contained in the business papers before the meeting.
Response to previous questions taken on notice. There was one, and it's been included as a later item, and I'll... Does that come in now, Josh? That question on notice, that should come in now, not or at 15, huh?
Sorry, just through the chair, this item 6 is if questions are taken on notice out of the agenda from the last one.
Okay.
Then given due notice of a question, as you have, is item 15.
All good. There are none. Public question time. Thank you for your participation in today's meeting, Mrs. Joan Lever. Please come forward to a microphone and clearly state your name and address for the minutes. You may ask 3 questions. And if there are no further questions from the public, you may put further questions to council. I don't quite really understand the way that's written, but anyway. Yes, just make sure the microphone is close to your mouth, please.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes.
Joan.
Yes, I've lived in Marble Bar for 24 years. Sorry, has everybody heard that? I've been here for 24 years.
Yep.
I'm a retired Justice of the Peace and also a primary school teacher.
Your address, please, Joan.
My address is the concern for the
your street address, where you live, please.
Oh, yes. Unit 5, 32 Francis Street, pensioners' quarters. Just down the road.
Perry Smith units.
Yes, Perry Smith.
Great, thank you.
Yes, my concern is about the children. That big thing in the middle of the street is really not an aesthetic thing for this little town. And really it should be removed because as I've been here for 24 years, that road has always been free of anything there. And so people could see properly what's coming and going. Right now, there is a problem. It's an obstruction to danger. Kids are coming from the school down the street, and then where do they head to? They head straight to the shop. Now, sometimes those kids are talking. High school kids, will talk all the time. They never stop. Mm-hmm. If they have a child at the back of them, the child would follow the older ones. But if there's a car coming down full speed, how are they going to get out of the way if they are just a little bit behind and in the way of the road and the traffic? So there is a concern there that gadget in the middle of the road, to my opinion, should be taken away. One thing about councillors is the need to talk to the people to see if, I know that was there before I came back. I was away for 24 years, then I've come back, so I've been here since, I think, about 4 months or something. So this place holds a dear lot to me because my kids went to school here. So one of them is being a doctor at the moment, trained to be a doctor. And the other one is a supervisor in Rio Tinto. So not only that, I taught the kids here for about 4 years on and off at school because I'm also a special ed teacher. So that worries me because even if when the kids are down at the park, they go running across the road and straight to the shop. Sometimes they won't even look. And I'm waiting for an accident to happen there, and it shouldn't. So these plannings that are happening and do happen not only here, but in other towns, should be given to the people to say if it's okay. And it's terrible in a way. It's not economic for government to take that down. But by the same token, ask the people first what they want and if it's okay and what problems they're going to have. So that's my concern, is the children. And not only them, the old people that are walking across from the park to the shop, they may not even hear a truck coming or somebody coming fast. Because the other day, someone told me that there was a car speeding down and this will happen. Even though the signs are there, the zones, it will still happen. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you very much for your question. Officers, do you think we could have a look to see if that camera could be suspended between two poles at a height sufficient, or do you have a comment, please, Stephen?
Through the chair, and thank you for your question, and certainly appreciated our social discussion last night at the community meeting. It was really good to get some of those on-the-ground issues so that we can
I talk too much sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Thank you for that. Now, what we'll do is we'll undertake to have a look at what options are available. The camera is there for a specific reason, and that was to assist the police in operations and so forth. Certainly not, as we said last night, I explained to you last night, not to spy on people and like that. But let's have a look at where it's located, and is there a better way of doing it to address the issues that you've raised? They're good issues, and we'll see what we can do. But rather than sort of locking in a solution, let's have a look at what the problem, how we can resolve the problem for you.
Yes, but because even that stump that's holding it there, that's a little bit on the wide side that people can't see. Another little kid going across the road, so it's an obstruction.
Yep, no, taken on notice, and we'll certainly see what we can do for you. Thank you for your raising that issue with us.
Yeah, that's the only.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Labour. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you would like to. If you would like to go, you are welcome to do that. So that's your choice. But thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, that's okay. Item 9, applications for leave of absence. An application for leave of absence for the Ordinary Council meeting of 28th of March 2025 has been received from Councillor Annabelle Landy. Are there any further requests for a leave of absence for future meetings? None in the chamber? Okay, could I please have a mover and a seconder for the following motion. Request for leave of absence, that leave of absence be granted to Councillor Annabelle Landy for the Ordinary Council meeting of 28th of March 2025. Moved by Councillor Lockyer, seconded by Councillor Bear. I shall now put this to the vote. By hands, thank you. By show of hands. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the chambers, 1, 2 at Newman, 3 online. We have 8 for, none against. Thank you. Pardon? Yes, if you can zoom them in a bit. That would be good. Yes. Too much, Susan. No. Can we go out a bit? Yes, I can see you vote. That's lovely. Thank you. I have a perfect portrait of the three of you. Lovely. Item 10, confirmation of minutes of previous council meetings. 10.1, minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 28th of February 2025 have been circulated and published on the Shire's website. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that the ordinary and confidential minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 28th of February 2025, as published on the Shire website and councillor portal, be confirmed as a true and correct record of proceedings. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to the motion? Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Lockyer. Are there any further changes to the minutes that councillor members are seeking? None, thank you. None in the chamber, thank you. I shall now put this to the vote. Could you raise your hands in affirmative? We have 8 for, 0 against. Council members' written reports will be included in the minutes. Are there any further members' reports to this meeting? I do have a list of council reports that I can just give to Josh and for inclusion in the minutes. Item 12.1.1, conduct of the 2025 local government ordinary elections. As presented before you, the recommendation reads that Council supports the conduct of a mixed election model comprising the ability for electors to cast their votes in person or by postal ballot. Number 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to provide written confirmation of the Electoral Commissioner to the Electoral Commissioner that Council accepts the cost estimate of $23,709 ex-GST for the conduct of a postal election for the East Pilbara ordinary government elections, subject to agreement from the WA Electoral Commission that it will support the Council's intention to meet the travel costs to enable the returning officer and Shire officers to visit the district's remote communities to receive applications for replacement postal election packages, and notes a further report will be made to Council to consider the necessary motions declaring the Electoral Commissioner to be responsible for the conduct of the 2025 ordinary elections and to determine the method of conducting the 2025 ordinary elections. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Anthony, seconded by Milton. Would the mover like to speak towards the motion, Anthony? No. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion, Milton?
No.
Thank you. Does any other council member wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I just wanted to commend the administration on this creative workaround to make our local government elections more accessible to our anything outside of the main township. I think it's very creative, and I think the WAEC has a lot to learn from how we are looking at conducting our elections. So well done, Josh, and the team. But otherwise, nothing else to add.
Thanks, Peter. That, I'm sure, is everyone's nodding, so everyone takes that on board. Excellent observation. I have a couple of questions on this one. Just for your information, the State Council of Wellga governance policy team, made up of elected members who are delegates from councils to Wellga, are currently working on an advocacy position for the are currently working on an advocacy position for the conduct of local government elections. One of the aspects is compulsory voting in local government elections or not. So currently it's certainly not compulsory, as you know. The floor is evenly divided, with the city's own delegates preferring a compulsory election model and the regional delegates preferring a non-compulsory model. There is agreement that electronic voting would be best in the long run. Part B, my question is, what is the suggested time frame to receive postal ballots, particularly from electors posting their vote from outside the Shire?
Through the chair, I appreciate the advance notice of this question. So the regulation 44.1 of the local government election regulations require the returning officer to send out postal election packages, the ballot papers, as soon as practicable after the close of nominations. I'm not sure of the date of the close of nominations at this stage, but it's usually 4 to 6 weeks before the election. All postal ballots, they must be received by 6 p.m. on election day. They are ordinarily processed in Perth by the Electoral Commission, and it is one of the challenges that present itself to regional and rural local governments, particularly where the postal service isn't as reliable as it may be elsewhere. So yeah, it means that electors, whether they're posting it from within or outside of the district, need to ensure that they vote as early as possible to make sure it gets there. Unlike state and federal elections, the deadline is strictly 6 p.m. Federal and state elections usually have a 2-week period, but not here.
Thank you. Thank you for that. My other question or comment on that is that the pie charts in appendices 1 and 2, as provided by the WA Electoral Commissioner Robert Kennedy, are misleading. The quotes for in-person and or postal election are cut and paste of each other with no justification for the amounts to be charged in each case when we're asked to consider the in-person election or the postal vote election. So the 23,000 as per 96,000, and they're assuming that it's exactly the same cost but magnified, but gives no detail of that at all. The only difference in the letters is the dollar value, which is believable but unjustified. Could we see a breakdown of those charges? But at this stage, the recommendation is that we have a postal-only election. So, yes, please, Josh.
So I have sought advice from the Electoral Commission on this. They advise that they can't provide a precise cost breakdown, that the pie graph is broadly representative of the different, the kind of proportion of the expense. However, you are quite right. They are copies of each other, and the one in the graph in the chart in the letter concerning the in-person voting obviously has not taken into account the travel expenses. My understanding is that the difference between the two in-person and postal election methods is that the $30,000 is based on roughly the additional travel costs associated with running the in-person from the last time when we had the extraordinary election in East Ward.
Thank you. Okay, that being the end of questions, I shall now put this to the vote. Please note an absolute majority of decision of council is required for this item, which is at least 5 votes in favour of the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. 5 in the chambers, 5 in Newman and 1 on with the President. So thank you. That is 8-4 and none against. That is carried absolutely. Item 12.1.2, polling places, federal, state and local elections. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that Council authorises the Chief Executive Officer to approach the Australian and WA electoral commissions advocating the Shire's support for in-person voting for communities in Marble Bar, Nullagine and other remote areas across the district of East Pilbara, and that such in-person voting be over a reasonable period of time to allow electors to participate in the elections at federal, state and local government levels. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Anderson. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
No.
So if I can just add, the reason that we
Please.
put this paper up was very specifically because Nullagine nearly got missed out. As soon as we found out, or we were aware, I wrote a very, very quick email to the Commissioner and I got a phone call back in half an hour, and then the next day they had a plane up here. That was great. However, even the Marble Bar version of it, 45 minutes doesn't really cut the mustard, I don't think. Honestly, like when we do the local government elections, we're there for 2 or 3 or 4 hours at different locations when we get a rush, and then not much at the back end. So I think they can give us a bit more than 34 minutes. So that's the reason we put this paper up.
Thank you, Stephen. I shall now put this to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I have 8-4, none against. That is carried. Item 12.3, policy amendments, purchasing policy and pre-qualified supplier panel. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that Council adopts the amended purchasing policy as Appendix 1 to this report. Number 2, adopts the amended pre-qualified supplier panel policy as Appendix 3 to this report. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved by President Middleton, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
I have a question, please. Appendix 1, 7.1.3, page 8 of Appendix 1. Dot point, manual check requests for reimbursements. My question is, why are we issuing manual checks, please? And are these checks crossed account payee only? I see an audit risk red flag. Thank you, Mr Brown.
Through the chair, and again, thank you for the prior notice of this. So we don't issue very many checks at all. The chief recipient is understood to be the WA Department of Transport, which is used, I understand, they have a requirement, I understand, for cheque payments concerning number plates. Any questions relating to why they use that process would be best addressed to them. We have referred, though, the matter to our internal auditor, who's just going to take a preliminary review of the cheque issuing processes. His very initial advice to me was that it's not something that the external auditors have noted before, so it's unlikely to represent a large risk, but he will come back to us with a response.
So if I can also add, so I have to sign the cheque, so I know the only one that we actually sign it's in relation to number plates, absolutely is. And generally the number is very small. So there's a bit of, they give some comfort. It's written out to them, it's not written out to just like a blank.
It's not a blank cheque. You don't sign a book full of blank cheques
It's
and
not
then
blank cheque, no.
let Josh go to town.
It's
No,
right. It's very
right.
clear. It's very clear what it is, and it's double signed by two parties within our organisation to give it some robustness.
That's good. We're also facing the banks doing away with cheques in the very near future. So, yeah, I'm sure the operations of the council will sort that one out in due course.
I've just
Thank you, Josh.
received some very late, like right now, some advice from our, that the Department of Transport is moving towards BPay. So future transactions to them should be by BPay.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. I shall now put this to the vote. Could you please raise your hand in assent? I have 5 in the chamber, 3 online. That's 8-4, none against. That it is carried. Item 12.1.4. Amendment to Delegations and Authorisations Register, Tenders for Goods and Services. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that Council 1, pursuant to section 5.42 and 5.46 of the Local Government Act 1995, adopts Appendix 1 to this report as an amendment to the Shire of East Pilbara Register of Delegations and Authorisations, and 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to publish the updated Register of Delegations and Authorisations. This is an absolute majority decision. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Lockyer. Would the mover like to speak towards the motion?
No.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? I do have a question on this motion. Function 16, I'd like to amend it to and I had sent through an amendment, a notice of amendment on resolve, but that may not have come through to the governance team. Okay, so that's a glitch anyway. The amendment, I don't have you do have it in front of you. So I want to amend function 16 to where it says, currently it says the authority to reject any tender of any value, the CEO retains discretion to either inform the council of the decision or request a formal council resolution to decline or reject a tender as deemed appropriate. My amendment would be from retains for the authority, it would read authority to reject a tender of any value, full stop. The CEO must inform the council in confidential items as a matter for noting the decision to request a formal council resolution to decline or reject a tender as deemed appropriate. So my motive there is to put it into confidential items because it is a tender.
So if I can, I understand what you're trying to get to, and I'm all good with it, except I think the fact is it's already rejected at that point. And if I can just give the purpose why we want to implement this, because generally speaking, council have never said no, continue and pay it 3 times the price. Reject it, and then we go and do negotiation. What that does do though, is it slows us down by, it could be 2 months, 6 weeks. This gives me the authority to get in there and get it done. So we just say, no, it's out, go and have a chat to the tenderers and see if we can get the price down to a price that, which we then, depending on the value of it, we're probably going to bring it back to council anyway for endorsement of the new one, because tender's over 250, one limit's 500 or 499. So there's a chance it could be over the 499 anyway. So I have no issue with I absolutely, I'm very happy to either in the info bulletin, the CEO's report, or in a confidential separate item at the back to say which ones have been rejected. But you really couldn't redact the rejection, if that makes sense. You'd be backing your decision. So what this is asking you is to back me on the making a decision to reject the tender because it's absolutely ludicrous. There would be ones that we would bring to council anyway because we really want to bring it to your attention. but we'll bring it to your attention anyway, before or after the fact. If it's line ball, let's bring it to council. It's just
Thank
given the
you.
discretion to move forward quicker
Yeah.
on some of these projects.
Thank you. I'll withdraw the amendment. I'll put this, are there any speakers, other further speakers for or against? Okay, I'll put this vote to the vote, please. Raise hands in agreement. I have 8, thank you, all for, none against. That is carried. Thank you. Item 12.1.5, policy review. Council member communications with Shire officers policy. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that the council accepts the review of council member communication with Shire officers policy and adopts the reviewed policy as Appendix 1 to this report. Can I just note that in there, in paragraph 2, line 2 of details and analysis, the missing word years isn't there, so if we can just slot years in and assume that that's in there in the policy, and we'll move forward on this. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved Councillor Lockyer, seconded Councillor Bear. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Councillor Bear, would the seconder like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Does any council member wish to speak on this motion? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I have 8 in the chamber and none against, or 8 for and none against. That is carried. Thanking you. Item 12.1.6, policy review, related party disclosures policy. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that council accepts the review of the related party disclosures policy and adopts the revised policy as Appendix 1 to this report. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Everett. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Does any council member wish to speak to this motion? Thank you. I shall now put this to the vote. Please raise your hand. I have 8 for, none against. That is carried. Item 12.1.7, status of council decisions. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that council notes the report. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Thank you, Councillor Lockyer. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Would any council member like to speak to the motion? In that case, I shall now put this to the vote. Please raise your hand in assent. Thank you. I have 8 for, none against. That is carried. Item 12.2.1, monthly financial statements, insurance and investment report as at the 28th of February 2025. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that council adopts the monthly financial statements for the period ending 28th of February 2025 of the 2024-25 financial year, included as appendices 1 and 2 of the report. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Bear, President Middleton. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion? Does any other councillor have anything to add? I have a couple of questions. The item is incorrectly numbered at Appendix 1. You've got that. Item, can I ask about item REC 002, page 15 out of 26. What is a Smith machine, please?
Sorry,
It's a piece of gym exercise equipment.
Thank you. Item 0590.
Sorry, I missed that explanation.
I'm sorry.
I'm sure you could give us a more thorough explanation. It's a piece of gym exercise equipment.
Pardon? I'm in
Right, got it, thank you.
item 12.1.2, Appendix 1. So it's about the purchases report, things that have been itemised purchases. That was item 159025. Oh no, sorry, that was RAC 002. Okay, item 059025, page 15 out of 26. Do we receive a bushfires grant to supply remote communities with firefighting trailers? Noting that I think it was about a $14,000 spend on firefighting trailers.
Yes, we did. We received 2 grants, which actually covered the cost in full.
Fantastic. Item RCS 900, page 16 out of 25. Can this error be corrected so that it does not show a 500,000K underspend, please? Scott had already explained the accounting error to council. That concerns the guardrail on the Marble Bar Sandy Creek crossing. So I think it just keeps coming up in all the reports that it's costing us $700,000 for a guardrail to be reinstated. Yeah, it's just. I'm sure it's just a correction that it just appears.
a type error in Synergy, which I will work with ML to resolve.
Thank you. And it's within that synergy in your system. Yeah, I get that. Note number 8, page 19 out of 25. Why are the opening balances for fuel set at $0 as at the 1st of July 2024, please? Where are the carry forward consumables accounted for? Okay, so we should have fuel in our tanks as at the 1st of July or the 30th of June at the end of financial year, but I understand that we have a system where we reset everything to 0 at the start of the financial year, but I think we need some sort of an asset report to show those consumables on hand.
That normally constitutes stock at the end of a year, so it goes to the balance sheet as a stock item rather than an expense.
Excellent. Thank you. And then my last one, liquid waste loan number 96, 21 out of 25. Where can I find the income from liquid waste processed, please? Subsequent to me writing this on, I did find it in the information bulletin and had already sent the email when I finished with reading of agenda questions, so I'll withdraw that question, please. Thank you. At this, I shall now put this to the vote. Could you please raise your hand for? Thank you. We have 8 for and none against. That is carried. Item 12.2.2, list of payments month ending 28th of February 2025. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that council, pursuant to section 5.232A of the Local Government Act of 1995, that the list of payments not be disclosed, and endorses the below payments for the period 1st to the 28th of February 2025. EFT payments, $3,939,373.91. MasterCard, $9,819.67. Cheque payments of $14,481.70. Direct payments of $50,387.70. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bear. Thank you, President Middleton. Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Does any council member wish to speak on the motion? Does anyone want to speak against the motion? I shall now put this to the vote. Please raise your hand. 8 in favour, none against. That is carried. Item 12.3.1, multi-purpose clubhouse management model evaluation. Thank you. Councillor Lockyer has left the chamber. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads: 1. Note the multi-purpose clubhouse management model evaluation report. And 2. Note the report is part of a preliminary consideration should a multi-purpose clubhouse be considered in the future. And 3. Note that discussions will be undertaken with clubs to consider needs as a part of the development of the community facilities plan to be completed in 24-25. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Bear, seconded President Middleton. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring it up that the engagement and responses that we got to this is really shockingly low, and we're making, like, we've got it in this report that, you know, there's like 12 people responding to these things, and like we're making decisions based off 12 people. That's really, really shockingly low. And is that because we didn't go out and really hunt for that and we just passively waited for people to respond? Because, yeah, I feel really like a little bit uncomfortable when we're looking at a report and consultations happened and we've got 12 people.
Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
Through the Chair, I can assure you that we worked very hard to get feedback from the community, in particular from the clubs, including setting up a number of one-on-one opportunities for clubs to meet with both senior staff and the consultants. And in some cases, clubs actually didn't attend those particular meetings, and we then had to undertake further follow-up. We also had to work very, very hard to get feedback from the clubs, particularly in and around their financial positions, and the consultant made himself very available, as did myself and the senior for recreation and leisure. I would note, though, that I agree with you that we would like further consultation, and in part that is why the recommendation has been worded in the way that it has, to note that further consultation will take place as a part of the community facilities plan, and there will need to be more robust discussions about the future of this project moving forward.
So through the Chair, I guess that is one of the issues that we do have particularly in Newman, where we do not get a big response on anything much, which is a little bit disappointing. It's really hard to get people to actually make comment on things. So this is just another example of that. And I guess the audience was even smaller because we were relating to the sport club owners only, not even the wider community. So very hard to get a meaningful response. I do think if we get to the point where we are seriously thinking that we might build a sporting facility, there'd be a lot more work need to be done at that stage to really understand their appetite. A couple of years ago, everyone was in. They all wanted it. Now it's a mixed bag responses, and that's probably because the safety issue has been rectified by the police action, and there's no break-ins and so forth. So, yeah, this is a really difficult one. I really think, before you went to even contemplate building a building, there would need to be a lot more work done to understand the appetite for it.
I think I come back to the point that I think myself and a couple other councillors have raised in the past when we've had discussions about this, is at some point we need to sort of use our own common sense about what is going to be the right choice for the community, notwithstanding 12 responses in consultation. And I'd hate to see a great project like this shelved indefinitely without, considering our common sense and our ability to evaluate the needs of the community without necessarily taking into consideration the low engagement in consultation. So
Thanks.
make
Absolutely.
it known that, I would really hate to see this project shelved indefinitely when I think that it's definitely a need. Those facilities are ageing, and having 4 clubs having a monopoly over community infrastructure in town is also to the detriment of the wider community as well. So.
And look, it might, through the chair, it might come to that. And I think, I think it's sort of watch this space, and the barometer changes quite considerably depending on what's going on around other external events to make them change their mind. But it may come to that, and I think, when we're talking about priority projects, which are the priority projects, which aren't the priority projects, this is definitely not forgotten. We've done this work. We've got some initial plans. It's certainly not forgotten. I don't think we're saying let's forget the project if you don't want to proceed at this point. It's there. The only thing the community need to understand is that there's a lead time for this to occur, and it could take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So that's probably the issue where council may at some point step in and say this is what we want to do, or not want to do, depending on your decision.
Can I suggest that perhaps council would like to visit a town of a similar size, or a couple of sites of similar size communities, or communities that may be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, to see what the response has been in those communities for the combined recreation centre club rooms model that was promoted in the royalties for Regions Days, and lots of the southern towns did build those. It might be advantageous for us as councillors to go and have a look at what has happened down south and how those communities have responded, and speak to some community and sporting people in those towns. And I would almost suggest doing that as an add-on day on top of the October conference might be an opportunity. Can we investigate that?
We can investigate that, yeah, sure.
Thank you. Do we have any further speakers on that motion or against? Thank you. Nothing online. I shall now put that to the vote. Could you raise your hand in favour? Thank you. I have 7 in the chamber and none against. That is carried. Could we invite Councillor Lockyer back? Pardon, Anthony has to go? No?
Anthony, your item's coming up, just so you know.
Right. Memorandum of Understanding Outback and Fortescue Festival. Anthony, I believe you have a conflict of interest. Thank you very much. He's temporarily gone. As presented before you, the officer recommendation reads that council endorses the MOU between the Shire of East Pilbara and the Newman Lions Club. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lockyer. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
No, I'm good.
Anyone else like to speak against the motion? I've a question, comment. I have some concerns with the conflict of interest, and thank you to Councillor, to President Middleton for declaring his conflict of interest and leaving the room. I just have some concern, particularly to Anthony Middleton signing this MOU as the president of the Newman Lions Club and the president of the Shire of East Pilbara, even though, how do we deal with that? Can we have some advice?
Yes, so for clarity, the way that we're doing it, so he isn't, so that I'm signing on behalf of the council, on the behalf of the council's decision, right?
Yes.
So the agreement, we've attached the agreement, so obviously Anthony is the Shire president, but he's also the president of the Lions Club. So he's signing as the president of the Lions Club. I'm signing as a CEO on behalf of council, and the agreement's in there so that there's no confusion about the clarity is there about what we are signing for, which is the same idea that we signed up in the previous year, but it was only a 1 year tenure. This is a longer year period because it seemed to work last year, I think, unless people got a different view. It certainly seemed to work really well. And if you want that to continue, this gives it some confidence in terms of the operation and the organisation of it for the future.
Thank you.
Just to...
Yes, please.
Off the back of your question, Wendy, was I guess I have no issues with the signing of the MOU, and I think it's a good going forward to have that agreement. My question is the legitimacy of the Lions Club as a association.
The viability of it, is that your
Well,
question?
not really. It's just I'm not aware of like their governance around how they conduct who's the president and whatnot. So that's all, and that's the only thing I have.
I will add to that I have also had some concerns previously because I've had someone come to me and ask some questions because there hasn't appeared to be an AGM in many, many years.
Well, they can't be, if they haven't, as you know, if they haven't had an AGM, if they haven't had an AGM, they can't be an incorporated body, so they need to report that to the associations branch, and the associations branch would be onto them because
that's
if they're not reporting that they've had an AGM and they're presenting their financial reports,
I just let Nicole give some words around the conversations we've been having.
Thank you very much. I just would note, and I guess it's in line with some of your comments, Councillor McWhirter-Brooks, that the Shire has actually been actively looking for any organisations that have been delisted. So that is a process that we are going through. We have found a number of organisations that have been delisted, and I've brought a couple of those to you so far, including the Motocross Club as an example. It does not appear from the investigations that we've done that there is that issue. I'm more than happy from a community's point of view to follow up with that club directly.
I understand they have had an AGM, but it would be very non-public probably and very, very small. They're having a lot of members, but certainly we can ask that question if you want.
Yeah, no, I know that it's not a public thing, and I know that I think previously they've stated that because they're under an entity which is a WA based is where they've captured that, but I think going forward, considering that we are supporting a local organisation that has minimal members in town, we need to be very clear around visibility, whether or not that's actually, is it an organisation that's welcoming new members? Because if it's only a small membership, if they're not advertising AGMs, how do we know that they're not closing the loops and just keeping it for themselves? And not that it is, this isn't about Anthony or anyone, but I'm just saying that, you know, it's one of those organisations that that are historic, so how do we make sure that it's available and open to everyone?
My understanding is they are getting new members. There are some new members, my understanding. I don't know the details of it.
Neither do I, so I'm just assuming here,
and,
you know, but I just want to make sure that it's clear from our perspective that we can stand in the public and go, no, we're all on board. And I can put our name as a Shire behind that.
May I comment? I'm sure they'd be registered with the ACNC, and the ACNC, if you look up a charity, it'll give a record of their governance and any lack of compliance, and the public can access that.
There's also nothing to stop that. As a council, what we can do is we can invite any of our volunteer organisations or sporting clubs or anyone into the chamber to give a presentation in corporate business time so that we understand the processes that they use. So that might be something that's valuable for us to do, because that festival is something that's, you know, it's a real feature. You know, it's a feature on our calendar. Are there any more speakers for or against this motion? In which case I shall put it to the vote. All those for? We have 7 for and none against. That is carried. Thank you. We may call Anthony back online. Yep. Just while he's getting online, I'll push through. We have no committee reports. We have no motion. What's the story with my motion? Huh? Refer to the additional page. So this one. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, that's it. Yep. Okay, hello Anthony, good to see you back. We have moved through items 13 and 14, 13 for which committee report says nil, motions for which previous notice has been given, there are nil. Questions by members for which due notice has been given, number 15, there is one from myself. I would like a response to DFIS declaring that the evacuation centres at Marble Bar were not fit for purpose, and as a result, the community needed to shelter in place during recent cyclone Zelia. What is being done about the evacuation centre in Marble Bar? And I do have a response. The response is that and my question did include Nullagine. The Nullagine Evacuation Centre is the school managed by the Department of Education. The Marble Bar Evacuation Centre is the Civic Centre managed by the Shire. Both were audited by the Department of Communities late last year with no issues reported. Nullagine and Marble Bar Evacuation Centres were used through Cyclone Ilsa with no issues reported. During Tropical Cyclone Zelia, the new DFIS Divisional Commander advised that they were not happy that Marble Bar Civic Centre had exposed windows and decided against the advice of the Incident Controller not to stand up the evacuation centre. The Shire is installing security screens on the windows with a contractor on site yesterday for the final measurement of the windows in Marble Bar prior to the installation at the end of this financial year. The Shire is not aware of complaints regarding the Nullagine Evacuation Centre, although it got very wet in Nullagine. Shire staff will follow up at next week's local emergency management committee meeting.
So if I can add just two other things. So we did receive a grant that was a certain value based on the quotation that we received from a contractor previously, and the contractor then went bankrupt. So then when we actually went to get another price, the price absolutely wasn't the right price. So we've applied for more, and that's coming, and hence the reason of the delay. And that shutter idea was just something that we decided to do. It wasn't something that someone asked us to do because we thought it was a smart move. In addition to that, we're also applying for a grant for additional toilets at the back awning of the building. We think that might make it a bit more comfortable as an evacuation centre if you had multiple showers and toilets at the rear, at the tail,
on the south end,
the tail back of the veranda there. We think they can fit in quite nicely. So we're applying for that. So we're trying to enhance the facility, but as it stands right now, it is okay. We're just doing a bit more work. That's all.
Thank you. New business of an urgent nature introduced by a decision of council. There is nil. Item 17, confidential matters behind closed doors. Council members, may I please have a mover and seconder that items 17.1.1 RFT 16.2 removal and disposal of wood material, Newman Waste Material Facility of the agenda be dealt with behind closed doors in accordance with section 5.232 of the Local Government Act of 1995. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Lockyer. Do I have a seconder, please? President Middleton. I shall now, this procedural motion, I shall now put this to the vote. I have 8 for, none against. That is carried. Did you vote for, Councillor Chapman? Your vote, thank you very much. There are no people in the gallery. So the decisions made by the council in consideration of these items will be made available publicly following the closed session and will be published within the minutes of the meeting for your information.
Josh, can you confirm that the recording
has turned off? 11:43 a.m. and the meeting is reopened to the public. Can governance staff confirm the live streaming has recommenced? Councillor Bear has re-entered the chamber at 11:43.
Yes, I can confirm that he's.
Thank you, Josh. For the benefit of those watching the live stream and those of you who have returned to the gallery, that's if we have public in the gallery, Council made the following decisions during the closed session. Item 17.1.1, RFT 16-2-2425, removal and disposal of wood material from the Newman Waste Management Facility, that Council declines to accept the tender received from the Cleanaway Proprietary Limited for RFT 16-2425, removal and disposal of wood material, Newman Waste Management Facility, and to formally finalise the tender process without award. The resolution passed 7 in favour and 0 against. The decision will be incorporated into the minutes of today's meeting and published on the Shire's website for our community and general public, to be confirmed at the 28th of 2nd of May meeting of 2025, ordinary council meeting.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, because the April meeting will be in May. Thank you. The date of the next meeting of the council is scheduled for the 2nd of May 2025 and will be held in the Newman Council Chambers. There being no further business, I declare the Shire of East Pilbara Ordinary Council meeting of 28th of March 2025 closed at 11:45 a.m. I would like to thank council members and staff for their attendance and extend our gratitude to the staff here at Marble Bar for their efforts and hospitality in hosting today's meeting. Thank you very much for your lunch. I believe we'll...